Welcome. Welcome everyone to our Cash for College series for Lab Wednesday, our college session. Today we're going to walk you through how to complete the FAFSA, a step-by-step introduction and guided walkthrough. So for those who I don't know and who don't know me, my name is Alexis Tucker and I'm our Educational Associate of College and Career Readiness. We have Ms. Tracy Kittle who couldn't be here with us today, but she actually really helped out with making this great presentation for you guys. And I have someone new to introduce. Her name is Miss Inez Ford, and she also is the Educational Associate of College and Career Readiness. Inez, do you want to hop on and say hi?
Hello, everybody. How you doing? I look forward to working with you.
Perfect. So we didn't quite get to this. I don't know if you can hear the music at the beginning, but we do have something really cool called the FAFSA playlist that actually curated and put together a bunch of really cool songs about applying for FAFSA, about earning money, cash for college. So scan that QR code and you can go there and jam while you are completing your FAFSA today. So our goal for today is to begin completing the FAFSA. And for those who don't know, the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, where you can be awarded up to $6,345 in free money for college and career pathways. So that's what we're looking at doing today. And nearly 20 million students apply for FAFSA every year. And I thought that it was really important that we put that number out there just so you can see and understand the volume of students who are also applying for federal student aid. And also to know that FAFSA is granted to students, or money for college by the federal government, is granted to students on a first come, first served basis. So the FAFSA opened up on October 1st. Today is October 21st. So you want to make sure that your application is in sooner rather than later so that you can be eligible for more student aid. Inez, do you want to share some things for our FAFSA Toolbox? What are some things we need to get started?
Sure, absolutely. So the things that you're going to need a FSA ID for yourself and your parent, the name of one college that you intend on applying to. You're going to need your parents' information, their marital status, their year of separation or divorce if they are divorced, and you're definitely going to need their social security number, and you're also going to need your parents' 2019, 2020 taxes or financial information.
Awesome. Thank you. So we also listed out some special considerations that we want to think about when applying for the FAFSA, or if any of these circumstances apply to you, we can work with you on an individual basis. So if you may be homeless or live with another relative, or your parents don't file taxes, or you might be an undocumented student, which undocumented students will not complete the FAFSA. You actually complete the MISFA, which is a similar process, but it's specifically for the government in the state of Maryland. Or you might be in foster care or have parents who are separated or divorced. All of these different circumstances will apply to the FAFSA, and you have to do like certain different things, but we can work with you on making sure that you are completing the document accurately so that you don't get pulled for verification. And if you do, we can help you with that as well. So let's get started. I am actually going to pull up something called the FAFSA demo simulator. Here, what we're able to do is we're able to do a simulation. So I'm gonna type in my username and my fake username and password, and we're gonna walk you through a step-by-step process as far as completing the FAFSA. While I'm pulling that up, and as do you think there's anything important our students should know before getting started?
Make sure that you and your parent get the FSA ID completed. And what Ms. Tucker is going to pull up is exactly what you're going to see when you log into the FAFSA. So it's called the demo account, and she's going to pull up exactly what you are going to see.
Cool. Thank you. So when you get to your FAFSA page and you go to the login page, you're going to see two options for login to the FAFSA. I am a student, or I'm a parent, preparer, or student from a freely associated state. We are not any of those things. We are students. So we're going to click I am a student, and then it's going to ask you to put in your FSA ID, which we created in our previous session. So I'm going to drop in my FAFSA ID. I'm going to drop in my password. I think that I wrote down, what was my name? I think I wrote down that my name was Larry. find it. Uh-oh. Here we go, new users. So my name is Larry. For my FAFSA ID, I'm going to type in new user 67. You will not type this in because that's not who you are. And for my password, I'll type in what they give me. And then I'm going to log in. I'm going to press next. It's going to process, and then it's going to come up with this disclaimer, this warning. Make sure that you are the right person to fill out the FAFSA. This is an important government document. You don't want to do it wrong. It's going to say all that kind of stuff. I'm going to say, okay, accept. It's going to process. And then we're going to get started. Welcome, Larry. So I'm going to get started with the 21-22 FAFSA application because we're actually in the 2020-21 academic school year. So we're applying for next year.
And that's really important. Please make sure that you pick the correct year.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Inez. So for our save key, we're going to create a save key that we know that we can remember. And you might want to write it down or put it in your iPhone or however you want to do that. And we're going to press next. Processing. Sometimes it takes a while. All right, so these are just general questions about the FAFSA, an introduction. You can get through. Click next. So all of this information that you see here was actually pulled from my FSA ID. So they already know my social security number. They already know my first name and my last name, and they already know my date of birth. But I want to verify that these things are actually accurate and make changes where they might be necessary. But for now, they're fine, so I'm going to click next. I'm going to go to next. All right. So after we've done that, it's going to ask us for our email address, to re-enter our email address to verify, and then our cell phone number or telephone number. So we'll just type in phone number and click next. And this is just all preliminary information about student demographics. We're here also going to input our permanent mailing address, so the address that you currently reside at. And make sure that you put this information in accurately, please. So your street, the city that you're in, the state, and also your zip code. And click next. So here it's going to ask if you've lived in Maryland for at least 5 years. So if that is true for you, you will click yes. If that is false for you, you will click no, and then it'll ask you what state, what was your state of legal residence at that time. But for me, it's true. Are you a U.S. citizen? I'm going to click yes, I am a U.S. citizen. If you are not, if you are undocumented, then again, you will complete the MISFA, which is a separate process that we will make sure to connect you with. If you have questions about that, you can put them, you can email us directly, and I'll make sure that we provide our email addresses and contact information at the end. Here, so it's asking me about student information. What will your high school completion status be when you begin college in the 2021-2022 school year? I will be graduating high school with a high school diploma. What college degree or certificate will you be working on when you begin the 21-22 school year? You're going to click your first bachelor's degree for an undergraduate institution because you don't have any of these other degrees or credentials at this present time. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin the 21-22 school year? No. What will your what will your college grade level be when you begin the 21-22 school year? We have never attended college before. We're freshmen. It's exciting and new. And then lastly, are you interested in being considered for work study? So for those who don't know, and if we click this little icon, it'll tell us, but work study is a program where you'll have a part-time job, see on a campus, and the money that you earn towards that job goes towards your education. So common work study jobs include, you might work in a bookstore or work in the campus computer lab or something of that nature, but you always want to click yes. And the reason for that is it helps you to be eligible for more aid. Okay. So click yes and next. Next, it's going to ask, are you male or female? I am female, but if I did identify as male, it's going to tell me that most male citizens and male immigrants must register for the selected service system to receive federal student aid. Are you registered for the selected service system? Yes or no? That does not mean that you're going to go to war, but it is criteria that they put in place for male students. Don't you worry. Next. Here you're going to input your driver's license number if you have one. If you don't, that's completely okay. You're just going to go to the next section. Click next. Lastly, here it's asking, are you a foster youth or were you at any time in the foster care system? This is again a consideration for students who are in foster care, where you don't have to input information about parent demographics or financials, and that's a separate process that again we can work with you on. But if that does not apply, then please click no. And then it's going to ask you about your parents' education, highest level of school completed by parent one. For my parent, one of my parents, the highest education level was college, and for the other parent, it was actually high school, even though he went to a trade school. But that's what I'll put in for my two parents, and I'll click next. Now we've gotten through all of the preliminary student demographic information, and now it's going to ask us about school selection. So what is the name of your high school? And where is your high school located? And what state is your high school located? So the important thing about this is that we do not want to manually input information. If I'm a student at Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, I know that that's my school, but we want to actually search it. So we're going to type in Paul Laurence Dunbar High School, and we're going to press confirm. Or maybe we have to put the rest of it. And it's in Baltimore. It's located in the state of Maryland. And now we're going to press confirm. It's going to process, and it's going to actually search our school with the school code for us. So you can see that Paul Laurence Dunbar High School is the first school listed. I'm going to click select. And it's going to input the information exactly like it wants it, not like how I think it should go. And I'm going to click next. Okay, now here we are going to include information about our colleges of choice, and this is very important. We do the same process. So, for instance, you can add up to 10 colleges here, which is important to know. But for today, let's say I just want to add 3. Let's say I want to add Howard University. I'm going to search District of Columbia. The city is Washington. That's my name. The school name is Howard University. And it's homecoming season, so why not? So out of this list of schools, we can see that Howard University is the first one. I'm going to check, put a check next to it. It's going to give me the federal school code as well, and I'm going to click add more schools if I want to add more. I'm going to do it again for Ines. Can you give me a school?
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech is obviously in Virginia. What city is it in? Do you know?
I think Blacksburg.
Blackbird.
Blacks with an S. I think it's S, and then BURG. I think that's it.
Let's look up Virginia Tech. So you see how up here it says 1 of 2. You have 1 school selected. So I'm going to click Virginia.
That's it. That probably says it's got a long name.
Has a long name. So click next for that. And as if you want to continue to add more schools, you can, but we're going to click next for the time being. And then we can see that our two schools here are Howard University with the federal school code and Virginia Polytech Institution and State University, which is a mouthful. Here it's going to ask us about housing plans. You have the option to select on campus with parent or off campus. We're going to select on campus for these two institutions. One, because of the, college environment, but two, that's another way that you also can earn more aid from the government is if you select that you're staying on campus. And we're going to click next. If you won't be staying on campus, it's fine. You can select to live with a parent, but that's just a good thing to know. So the next question is going to ask, what is your marital status as of today? And we're going to click single. Most of us, if all of us, are actually single. It's not asking about your parent, it's asking about you. So I am single. Next. Okay. Dependency status. Do you now have or will you have children who receive more than half of their support from you between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022? If you do not have children, you will select no. Or if you have a child and you live with your parent and your parent is the custodial parent of you and the child, then you would also click no. If you live alone in an apartment or you don't live with your parent, you would click yes. And again, that's a separate process. Second question, do you have dependents other than your children or spouse who live with you or who receive more than half of their support from you now or through June 30th, 2022? Again, most of us will click no. And next. All right, the next part, answer the following questions to determine if you are required to provide information about your parents on your FAFSA. Check all that apply. So this is asking about information about your parents for the next step. So are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? At any time since you turned age 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care or were you a dependent or ward of the court? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you ever an emancipated minor? Does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? If none of these things actually apply to you, then you will click none. Okay, and for some of these questions, such as being an emancipated minor, all they're asking you for is if you have information that you can provide about your parent and their demographics or financials. If not, then you would be considered an independent student. And click next.
And just want to jump in, and what that independent student means is that, as Ms. Tucker said, you're not going to be required to provide information, but it does mean you will get flagged for verification. So if you click yes to any of those questions, that just means that the colleges that you apply to, they're going to want more information just to prove that what you say is correct. So for example, if you say that you were at some point between 13 and now, that you let's say you both your parents unfortunately passed away, you would just need a letter from your school counselor stating that. And so if you click yes, just know, and it's helpful to figure out who you're going to get that information from. Generally, it's your school counselor, but if you click that you've been homeless, it may be our homeless liaison with Baltimore City Public Schools, but just know that you're going to have to get proof of what you clicked. And again, if you click none of those apply to you, that's fine. You're just going to put in your parents' information. If one of those things did apply to you, that's fine too. Just know you're going to have the extra steps. So in the case of Virginia Tech and Howard University, and because this student that we made up applied to those two schools, the financial aid office at Howard University and the financial aid office at Virginia Tech, if that student had said both of my parents passed away, they would expect a letter from the school counselor stating that, just knowing that the student was telling the truth. Because believe it or not, there are families and students who lie about that information. Their parents are both doctors, and so they want financial aid money, and they know they probably won't get a whole lot if their parents make a lot of money, so they will lie and say things that aren't true. So just to make sure that you're telling the truth, the school is going to want some sort of letter. The schools that you apply to, the financial aid office is going to want some sort of letter just stating that yes, the student's parents did pass away, or yes, they are homeless. So just know that that will be coming, so that it's not a surprise to you if you do click yes. And your school counselor and myself and Ms. Tucker, we have people to work with you if the answer is yes to one of those questions. But we just want you to know ahead of time that you will have to take an extra step if you did answer yes to one of those questions.
Yes. Thank you, Ines. That was super, super helpful. Yeah, and like she said, this is self-reported data. Each of us sit down with our families and we sit down and add in information, but it's up to the government and who our FAFSA goes to in order to, like she said, verify and check that this is true and we are who we say we are. These are the circumstances in which we say that we have them. That's very important. The next question, on or after July 1st, 2020, were you homeless or were you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? If that does not apply to you, click no. If it does, then click yes, and there will be another verification step.
Yep, and that would be the homeless liaison more than likely would have to write a letter on your behalf to state that you were indeed homeless. So again, the schools that you apply to know that you were telling the truth.
Yes, ma'am. So now we're at the end of the dependency status checkpoint, and it tells us that based on the answers that we provided, we are considered a dependent student, which is fine. Where the average student who applies to FAFSA is a dependent student, and that means that you will have to provide your parents' demographic information and financial information as a next step. If you are able to provide information about your parents, you would click the first option. If you are unable to, for a myriad of reasons, such as you might live with a relative or have another extenuating circumstance, you would click I am unable and follow the next step. For now, I will provide information about my parents and click next. Okay, so as of today, what is the marital status of your parents? Or they never married, unmarried, and both legal parents living together, married or remarried, divorced or separated, or widowed? Again, you will select the option that best describes your parents or your family, and then input the correct information. Ines, did you want to add on more information about this?
Um, just make sure that you are putting the information that is correct. I had a student a few years ago who put that their parents were married and they were not, and it flagged the system, and they had to do some verification, and it just got really complicated. So just make sure that you put your parents' correct information.
Yes. So if your parents were never married and say you live with your mom, I will select which parents' information we provide, my mom's, and click next. You're going to input your mother's social security number, which this information may be pulled from the FSAD, but if it's not, then input the correct information. If you have a parent who is undocumented, you're going to input zeros. If you have a parent who's undocumented and you have US citizenship, then you'll put in zeros. Okay, that's important to know. And then I'm going to put in my mom's information.
And in terms of parent information, it's advantageous to put in I don't want to like if the parent who makes the least income in terms of putting in the information.
Yes. Thank you. At Gmail. This toolbar is in my way. And click next. Has your mother lived in Maryland for at least 5 years? If that applies, click yes. If it does not apply, click no. And then it's the same process as what they asked us earlier about if we lived in Maryland for at least 5 years, you'll submit the other state of legal residence and answer the following question, but we'll click yes. It's going to ask you questions about your household size, and where you see some of this other information, it was already pulled in. If you have other people who live with you, then you can add in other numbers. If not, you can continue. How many people are in your mother's household will be college students between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. Do not include your mother. So if it's only you, then put in one.
And remember, household also has to do with dependents. So if your uncle lives with you, or or a cousin, that's not, from a tax standpoint, that's not your family household. It's generally your parent and your brothers and sisters. Please go into the information and read the details. But if your grandparent, again, or an extended relative lives with you, that's not generally considered part of your household size. And so your parents will probably be able to give you more information about that. But just remember where it says your mother's children, that's generally your household size,
Right.
not the number of people that are living in your house.
Okay. So if you have a sibling, say we have a brother, we'll add in 1. If there aren't other people, we put in a 0. How many people in your mother's household will be college students between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2022? Do not include your mother. If it's only you, again, just put in that 1. If you have another sibling who's already in college, then you'll add in 2. And click next. We're getting through it, guys. So the next part is about parent financials. For 2019, has your mother completed her IRS and income tax return or another tax return? This is really important. Say she already did, we'll put already completed. And we're going to connect our parents' tax returns and everything they want to know in the FAFSA to something called the IRS tax verification tool, which syncs all that data so we don't have to manually input information. If you do choose to manually input information, you're more likely to be selected for verification. What type of income tax return did your mother file for 2019? Most likely an IRS 1040. And for 2019, what is your mother's tax filing status according to her tax return? And we will put head of household for most circumstances. So this is where the IRS data retrieval tool comes in. For all of this information, I would recommend sitting down with your parent and completing this portion of the FAFSA together so that we're all on the same page. FAFSA is a family affair. Put that on a t-shirt. So click next to continue, and we're going to look a little bit more closely at the IRS data retrieval tool and what it's asking of us.
And it is helpful to use the IRS data retrieval tool. You don't have to, but like Ms. Tucker said, you're less likely to get verified. And verified just means that if you fill out your FAFSA, there are a certain amount of students. Let's just say a college has 5,000 students that apply. They may take 50 of those students and say, you are randomly chosen for verification. And that means that you have to prove the information that you listed on FAFSA, except that it's not random. And so if you are an independent student, you're going to get flagged for verification. Just like we said earlier, you would have to prove that, yes, my parents did pass away. You're going to have to get a letter. If you don't use the IRS data retrieval tool, generally speaking, you will get flagged. And so, yes, you can put in your parents' social security number and you can put in your parents' financial information, but because you don't use a data retrieval tool, which is coming from the IRS, the college has no way of knowing that you told the truth. If you just put in your parents' social security number and say, my mom was a teacher and she worked at XYZ school, there's no way that this college knows that that's the truth. And just like you wouldn't lend money to someone and you don't know who they are, they're not going to lend you the money or give you the money for a grant or scholarship. So again, if you don't use the data retrieval tool, more than likely you're going to get flagged for verification, and that pauses your financial aid application. So Howard and Virginia Tech would say, before we can fully process your financial aid information, you've got to prove that you've got to send in what's called an IRS tax transcript. And that means your parents are going to have to, it's just an extra step. So if you can use the IRS data retrieval tool, please use it, because you're more likely to just get done and be finished and not get flagged for verification.
Thank you. The next question is, it asks, what is our mother's adjusted gross income from 2019? This information can be found on the IRS tax form 1040 on line 8B. For the sake of right now, I'm going to input that my mom might make 40,000. But again, that number needs to match what is on the IRS 1040 tax form line 8B. And I'll click next. How much did your mother earn from working wages in 2019? This amount is the total of IRS form 1040 line 1, schedule 1 lines 3 plus 6. Again, you will go to that section of the IRS 1040 tax form and input that information. You indicated that your mother filed its IRS 1040. Did she file a Schedule 1? Select no if your mother did not file a Schedule 1 or only filed a Schedule 1 to report unemployment compensation, educator expenses, IRA deduction, student loan interest deduction, and others. we'll click no. And I'm thinking, I wonder if we can, oh, I guess we can skip for the sake of time. The next section is going to ask us about student financials. And that mostly will only apply to students who might be working who've made more than $5,000 in a year, or if you are an emancipated student. The final section of the FAFSA is the sign and submit. And you want to make sure that all of the information that we've just gone through with you today is accurate, and that it can be verified. And I'm going to go back to our presentation, because we have one important thing to highlight: the difference between what it means to be submitted and to be completed. And do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So when you finish the FAFSA and you sign it, it's going to say that it's submitted. And many students think that's the end, and it's not. It just means that you press the submit button. Completed means that the FAFSA has been accepted. So you could submit it and accidentally, let's say I put in the wrong social security number. I meant to type 578 and I typed 579. It's going to let me submit, but it's not going to be completed because the information that I put in is not going to match my actual social security number. So it's not going to be completed. So you need to log in 3 to 5 days after you submit it and make sure that it says completed. So again, when it says completed and you get what's called a student aid report, and this will make sense when you do it, that's when you know it's done and you don't have to worry. But if you get flagged for verification, it's not going to be considered completed. If you, like I said, you put in the wrong social security number, or just if something is wrong in the information you didn't sign with the FSA ID, it might even say submitted, but it's not going to be considered completed. So just make sure you go back in 3 to 5 days after the fact and make sure that once you get that submitted button, it says completed.
Absolutely. And just for some general information, um, you'll receive a confirmation email if it was completed, and it should say 3 to 5 weeks, I believe, for processing. But some general information about applying for FAFSA: you want to apply again as early as possible, but at least by January 2021, so that you're eligible for more aid opportunities. And after, you want to check your financial aid portal at your school once your application has been submitted and it is completed, so that you can see what aid you might be eligible for at those institutions. For early action, if you apply around the November dates for schools, you should hear back by January 2021. And if you apply for a general application, you should hear back somewhere between March and April for aid that you may be eligible for at those institutions. And for ways to submit, you can submit the FAFSA with a parent signature, which is highly recommended, and for most people. You can do it without a parent signature, but again, that you might get your FAFSA pushed back to you and it will be filed as submitted but not completed. And lastly, you can submit the FAFSA by printing, signing, and sending the FAFSA, which will be the case for students with undocumented parents. And then it'll take about 3 to 10 weeks to hear back, if that is your circumstance. So I hope all that information was extremely helpful. I know that it is a lot to think about, and FAFSA can be extremely overwhelming, but we are here to support. So I'm going to go through what's next for Lab Wednesday here, and then we're going to share our contact information in case you have any questions. So next week on October 28th, we are continuing and ending our Cash for College series on big scholarship programs and what it means to make big money moves. So outside of the FAFSA and federal student aid, where else does money for cash for college exist? For November 4th, we're starting a college application series. So we're looking at the college app craze and going step by step in what it means to complete a college application. And then for November 11th, we are looking at budgeting salaries for high school graduates. And then for our survey and our FAFSAFlexing challenge, today our survey will still be available, even though we could not conduct the session with you in live time. We'll make sure that information gets out to you and you can complete the survey as normal. If you complete the survey, we will do a raffle and have special Under Armour swag, just like we did last week, for students. We want to make sure that we can get that stuff out to you guys. And for next week, I have something even more exciting, which is our FAFSAFlexing Challenge Week. So you're going to take a picture or selfie of your FAFSA confirmation page and use that hashtag FAFSAFlexing. Make sure that you spell it correctly so that we can see it on the hashtag in your caption by October 28th, which is next Wednesday. And in your post, please do not forget to tag myself, hey, Miss Tucker, CCR, with 2 Y's, and Miss Kittle _ the FAFSA lady on IG for a second chance to win. We want FAFSA to be all about the fun of it all. And we want to make sure that we support you guys as much as possible. So we have some really great things in place for that. So lastly, before we end, I just want to thank you guys for joining us again. And even though it's virtual and this is asynchronous, and we hope that you guys were able to learn some really good information. If you have questions about anything we went over today pertaining to the FAFSA, please feel free to email us, or you can DM myself or Miss Kittle on Instagram as well. Ines, do you want to sign off and say anything?
I just want to thank everybody for listening, and just want you to know that we are here to help and that you can get through this. Yeah.
And that's all, folks. We will see you guys next Wednesday. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Yep. See you next Wednesday.
Bye.